That bitch survived. Andrea somehow fucking survived. There should have been no way out. Not after what I did. After my recovery, I did just what I said I was going to do. Armed with a crowbar and a hunting knife, a lighter and a pistol, and with a change of clothes, I headed back to Robinson State Park and tracked Andrea down. That wasn't hard. She was right there where I knew she'd be. She was in the same place that she had slaughtered our friends. Nothing if not predictable. The obvious choice, really. She walked up to me as if she was greeting an old friend or a family member for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure what she expected, but I don't think she expected me to stab her. But I did. I stabbed her over and over and over, blood soaking my clothes as it poured out of the holes that I kept making. I at some point put my knife away and pulled out the crowbar and started bashing Andrea, who was on the ground not moving at this point, with it relentlessly. Over and over and over, making sickening crunches and thuds. I must have stabbed and bashed her for an hour. Then I pulled out the knife and slit that bitch's throat. Finally, I put it away, pulled out the gun, and unloaded every bullet I had with me on that bitch. The end result was a mutilated corpse leaking blood out everywhere, broken bones everywhere, many poking out of the skin. So there was no fucking way she should have survived. Satisfied that she was dead, I washed off the blood in the river, burned my clothes, put on my spares, and left. I then tried to move on with my life. I got my mental state somewhat in check, made new friends, and found peace, thinking the nightmare was over. Until the next year, when I got that text that made my heart drop and made the memories and emotions of those days come flooding back. A text from Andrea's old phone number. The text basically said that whoever sent it missed me and that we should start hanging out again. I was fucking livid. I didn't think it was Andrea at the time. I thought it was one of my friends or someone who knew the story fucking with me. I sent them something to the effect of, "Do you think this is fucking funny? Do you fucking understand how fucked up this is? How much of a piece of shit you are for fucking harassing someone who fucking watched all their friends be fucking slaughtered in front of them and couldn't do anything to fucking stop it? Do you even fucking understand how much this is fucking with me? Or are you just so much of a stupid piece of shit that you can't understand fucking anything but, oh, torturing this dude is funny, go to fucking hell." I then blocked the number and tried to forget all about it. That ended up being a major mistake. Since I still had to get an education to succeed in life, at least according to my family, I was still going to school. I took consolation in the fact that this was my last year of high school, though. I was in a program that had half the day in normal school and half the day in trade school. I was working on graphic design. I also started doing it as a freelancer outside of school, and made a decent bit doing it. Most of the money I got, I put straight into the house, helping with house supplies, groceries, snacks for me and my siblings, etc. We had a family gathering coming up soon, so most of my money the month before went towards preparing for that. We, as usual, planned to go all out. There were 12 people coming. We made all sorts of food, desserts, and prepared all sorts of snacks. I unfortunately had school the day of the get-together and couldn't get my parents to let me stay home. I had a horrible feeling about going. I felt like something terrible was going to happen. But my parents wouldn't listen, so I reluctantly walked to the bus stop and waited, feeling worse and worse. I couldn't concentrate all day, both from excitement and anxiety about the reunion. Then, It was time to go home. I got on my bus, got off at school instead of waiting for my normal stop, as I wanted to walk home that day. As I got closer and closer to my house, the feeling of dread I felt got stronger and stronger. By the time I got to my street, I was almost having a panic attack. And then, I saw it. My house swarmed with cops and surrounded in police tape. I, in shock, walked up to one of the police and asked what was going on. I listened in horror as the cop answered my question. As it turned out, my entire family was massacred. My parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, grandparents, cousins, all of them were fucking slaughtered. The only thing left was a note. Maybe you'll visit me now. Hope to see you soon, Jack. From Andrea. My mom had her throat slit, and my dad was decapitated. They got off the easiest. One of my little brothers, Derek, was stabbed all over, just everywhere. My other little brother, Jason, was found underneath a dresser, crushed to death. My grandma and grandpa were found each cut in half, with the halves placed next to each other, like they were supposed to be stitched together, but there wasn't enough time. My older sister, who was visiting, was dismembered, seemingly while she was still alive. My Uncle Howard had his eyes gouged out, and his tongue cut out, and his legs and arms in switched positions. My Aunt Alice was forced to eat a bunch of rat poison. My Uncle Jimmy's heart was cut out of his chest and put into his mouth. My cousin Jerry was drowned in the bathtub. Samantha's head was slammed into a mirror until it shattered, then the wall, until she was dead. Emily was murdered with a hammer, much like what happened last year. They found Johnny in a freezer, which was tied shut. They found Travis impaled on a fucking broom. They found Doug inside the oven, cooked alive. That was what got the cops called, was the smell of burning flesh, and Doug's screaming. I couldn't comprehend it. All my family was gone. I was the only one left. I ended up inheriting my family's stuff, being the last one left, and because there were no wills, except for my grandparents, who divided what they had equally amongst their kids. Not that that matters now, I suppose. I spent the next few weeks going through all my relatives' things, deciding what I wanted to keep and what I planned to get rid of. I didn't keep a lot. Just a few personal items. I kept my grandpa's old compass, my grandma's foreign coin collection, my dad's trophies, my mom's lucky dice, Uncle Howard's watch, Derek's lighter, and Uncle Jimmy's gun collection. The rest I gave away or sold as applicable, as they didn't mean that much to me, and I didn't want or need them. Eventually, everything I wanted was in my house, and everything else was sold. I'd started actively using my uncle's, now my watch, and always had the compass with me. My days for the next few months were spent doing school and my normal activities, pretending that I was okay, and my nights were at home, stuck alone with my thoughts. At first, I was anxious, confused, and depressed. Over time, though, I became more and more furious about everything that happened, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Was it Andrea? If so, how did she survive? Why was she fucking doing this to me? What the fuck did she want? If not, who the fuck would do this, and why? It was driving me insane. I decided to gear up and go back to Robinson State Park to see if her body was still there. The place I killed, or rather, thought I killed her, was remote enough that people wouldn't stumble upon it, and if animals had gotten to it, there'd still be bones, probably. So I went back to that damned place that I thought I'd never go to again. I went back to that fucking park. She wasn't there. There was no fucking trace of her. No bones, no body, nothing. Then I saw it, nailed to a tree. A fucking note. It didn't seem to be from Andrea, though. It said, "I know who you are, Jack, and I know what Andrea's done to you. I want to help. Meet me at Buccaneer Lounge at 7 p.m. I'll be waiting." I was flabbergasted. Who left this note? And why should I trust it? Then again, what if it was legit? If it was, I couldn't afford to miss this chance. I decided to go, but bring self-protection just in case. So I grabbed a knife and a gun and headed out early. It was 6:30 when I got there, and I waited across the street. I've been avoiding that area since last summer, as it was Adam's bus stop, and I didn't want to think about the stuff that happened. I had no choice now, though. After a while, I checked my watch. 6:59. I sighed in frustration and turned around, ready to go back home. And that's when I heard a familiar voice telling me not to move. Before I could figure out who was speaking, there was a bag over my head. I was then told that I would get an explanation, but we were going for a ride first. I was guided into a vehicle and put into the front seat. I didn't resist, because while I could, I got the feeling it would be a bad idea. He then got into the driver's seat, and we were off. We drove for a while in silence. After a while, I attempted to start a conversation to fill the silence, but not much was said. When I asked about the bag, he said it wasn't his idea. It's just protocol. When I asked him if I knew him, he said yes. When I asked where we were going and why, he said he couldn't answer where we were going, but that there were people who needed to talk to me. He asked me if I wanted to listen to some music, and I agreed as it filled the silence. He turned it on, and that's how it went until the vehicle suddenly stopped. He told me that we were there, and he then guided me into a building. We stopped at the entrance. A woman then ordered us to give our rank, names, unit, and purposes for entering the building. I was about to ask what the hell he thought he was doing, but he responded to the woman before I could say anything. "Corporal David Jensen, Crowley Unit, bringing in the Andrea victim to talk to Second Lieutenant Mayer, as ordered." I was shocked, as I finally realized who my mysterious contact was. It was Adam's brother. I couldn't dwell on all the questions I'd had, though, as the woman let us pass, and I continued to be guided into the building and down several long hallways until he brought me into a room and had me sit in a chair. "Sir, here's Jack Evans," he stated. "I can see that. Jesus Christ, Jensen! How long has he had that bag over his head? My orders were for you to have him wear a sack until he got into this room and sat down. You can take it off now, Jack." I did so, and I looked around the room. It reminded me of the office of the Marine recruiter I went to see earlier that year, only bigger, and had never actually seen before. There were 4 people in the room, 2 guarding the door, 1 next to me who I assumed to be David, and a man sitting across from me at the desk. Before I could take in my surroundings or really say anything, The man reached out and shook my hand. "I'm Second Lieutenant Eric Mayer. No need to introduce yourself. We know who you are. We've been watching you for quite a while. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. We'll answer them. But we have some very important questions for you first, if that's okay." I nodded, and he continued. "I don't want this to feel like an interrogation or anything, just so you know. I'm asking these questions because we think that you can help us, and help you. Would you like something to drink? You've got water, coffee, tea, soda, milk, whatever." I asked for a coffee, as it always helped calm me down when I was feeling stressed, and when I was ready, they began, and a feeling of dread I tried to ignore started rising. First, I was asked normal questions, both about myself and the situation last year with the camping trip. As the questions went further, though, they started to become weirder. Stuff like my belief in gods, spirits, cryptids. Had I ever lost control of my body since last year? Personality changes, seen weird things, had weird dreams, or dreams about people coming true. Nothing seemed to be off the table. I started getting more and more anxious because I had seen weird things. I indeed had weird dreams and feelings that came true, even before Andrea's attack. I had already believed in spirits and cryptids. I obviously answered the best as I could because I wanted to know what the fuck was going on. After their questions were through, Second Lieutenant Mayer had a slight smirk on his face. "Well, I think we've heard enough. You've answered our questions, so now it's time we answer yours. Ask away." I asked them who they were, where we were, why the secrecy, and how they were going to help me kill Andrea. From this, I learned that they started off as a normal PMC, calling themselves ARC, but that they've been working for a group called Oculus, a group dedicated to vigilante justice, for so long as they consider themselves to be their personal military. We were in one of their headquarters, this one being under Freetown Fall River State Forest. The reason for the secrecy was because not everyone can be trusted, quite simply, and it was the safest way. Finally, how they'd help me with Andrea would depend on how we proceed from here. After an awkward silence, I asked them how we proceed. "Well, the way I see it, you now know too much for a civilian. So, you've got two choices. Join or die." "Nah, just fucking with you," he laughed. Then he spoke in a more serious tone. "In all serious, though, you have two choices. Your first option is enlistment. We'll train you how to deal with these scums of the earth, and send you to deal with them. We'll also pay you better than the US military, and we pay full benefits, as well as for universities and top military schools. And we don't keep anything hidden. You'll have full transparency. Alternatively, you can be brought home, pretend none of this ever happened, and go about what's left of your civilian life, and we'll deal with Andrea. However, if you breathe a word of this to anyone, you won't be found." I'm still feeling nothing but the sting of Andrea's betrayal and rage that she somehow survived, decided to enlist. I thought I could help other people like me, and prevent others from becoming like me. Unfortunately, not only was I wrong, I became a monster in the process. I was subjected to a lot of training and given injections monthly that I was told would help boost my physical capabilities. And so it went, killing and capturing criminals and shitty people, recruiting or silencing witnesses, and so on. However, as time went on, I noticed that I was being sent to silence witnesses far more often than I was being sent to handle undesirables. I also watched my fellow soldiers become more and more violent and less controlled or disciplined, as well as the lack of transparency from higher-ups, despite it being promised. The straw that broke the camel's back, however, was a specific undesirable execution/retrieval case. They sent me with a partner. It was David Jensen. I wanted to follow standard protocol for the typical suburban areas, which was calm, collected, and persuasive. David, however, was put in lead. Instead of following the procedure I was told we were supposed to follow, he kicked in the door, terrifying the woman and the baby inside. He ripped the baby out of her arms and slammed it onto the floor. Cute kid, he sneered, and then repeatedly kicked it with his steel-toed boots, making disturbing crunching sounds until the baby was nothing but a mess of flesh and blood. All the while, the inconsolable woman was screaming, crying, and begging him to stop. And when she realized that he wouldn't, she begged me to make him stop. But I couldn't. I couldn't move. Couldn't even think from the shock I was in. When that was over, he then pistol-whipped the woman unconscious, tied the previously inconsolable woman up, and gagged her. The shock at that point had turned to a burning rage, far stronger and darker than any I'd felt before, comparable to how I felt towards Andrea, in fact. I asked what the fuck that was about, and if he was insane. He just looked at me and told me to shut up and get in the truck. I had no choice but to get this over with. So I did. I then reported him to my superiors when he told me to focus on my work and shut the fuck up. So, when he had stepped out, I snuck in and investigated everything I could. And what I found is that I'd been lied to and betrayed again, and that this organization is full of shit. First of all, Oculus isn't a group dedicated to justice. They're a network for mercs and hitmen. ARC doesn't just kill criminals. They kill whoever they're paid to kill. Many of the people I've killed weren't criminals or bad people at all. The majority of the witnesses I'd had to collect weren't being recruited either. ARC's leaders were apparently very well connected to various human trafficking rings. The injections given to the soldiers were a cocktail of steroids. And there are PMCs working for this group all over the world. I then knew what I had to do. As my boss walked into the room and sat down, I walked up to him with my knife in hand. "I quit," I said, as I slit his throat. I then left before anyone knew what happened, taking a quick pit stop to put David Jensen down for good. I still have the equipment I was given. I know what I'm going to do from here. I'm going to hunt down these soldiers and the Oculus network. But first, I have to do something I really don't want to do. I'm going to find Andrea. Not to kill her this time. To get fucking answers about that night last year. About the day she killed my family. And about anything else she fucking knows.